Okay, very good.
My next speaker is somebody that I am so honored to host. He's from a Vietnam veteran, and this segment is going to be a little different from what everyone's used to. We're going to use a more we're going to use a more interview format. Elton, can we see your video?
Let's see. I'll try to put it on. Let me see. I have it right here. I'm
Yeah.
sitting here, and
And
let's see.
so I'm really pleased and so proud. And I have two U.S. Air Force veterans. So thank you both for your service. It's such an honor to be in your company and your presence. So I'll just read a quick background. A Vietnam pilot's journal, account of faith and freedom and flying. And in his book, The Second Team, after 53 years, Vietnam veteran and author James C. Downing Jr. of Fort Worth, Texas, has published his personal daily journal about Chinook, UH-47 combat pilot in Vietnam War. He details lives of U.S. Army soldiers during the Vietnam War, harrowing missions, narrowing, escaping death during emergency combat mission, and how his faith in God proved to be providential. James, I'm so honored to host you today. And I have on this panel, Colonel Donna Ford, who's a Pentagon survivor. She survived 3 wars, and a colonel with the U.S. So we're going to ask you some questions. I think somebody's microphone is making sounds, but it's all right.
I think it's me.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we
Okay.
can. And
This is my first Zoom session, so I'm hoping I'm doing it right.
I think you're doing marvelous. I think you're doing marvelous. All right. So we can't get Elton on view, but he's here with questions.
Okay, hold on.
I want to first begin with talking to you about what inspired you, on this journey. And let's go back 53 years and then come to present.
Well, I think ever since I was a young child, I was always loved airplanes and especially helicopters. And all through my life, I decided that the best thing to do would be join one of the armed forces. So back in 1963, I completed all the requirements for the U.S. Army helicopter training program. And from then on, I just moved from one thing to another. And after I completed flight school, I went to Korea for a year. Then I came back to Fort Rucker as a flight instructor. And then my last year, I went back to Vietnam as a combat pilot.
Fabulous. So why now, James? Why after 50 years or 53 that you decided to write a book? Why so long?
Well, first thing was, when I got out of the Army, Vietnam was a very controversial war. You know, they called us baby killers and all kind of things. I never killed anybody. I just flew helicopters. And so basically, I just moved on with my life. I moved from one thing to another. I completed my education. But then at the insistence of my daughter, who is now my publisher, she said, "This is really a fabulous story. You ought to share it with the world." So I says, okay. So basically, that's why I waited so long. And now I think, looking back, people begin to appreciate the Vietnam veterans, where when I got out of the Army, they certainly did not.
Well, let me just add this. I mean, James, the work that you provided, the service that you've offered and rendered, your incredible devotion to America. I mean, I can't see people that don't appreciate and understand. And I mean, because we live in America, one of the greatest country in the world. And it's because of the service of people like you that we can enjoy the benefits of freedom and the American value system. So, you know, there may be those that don't understand, and life was a different scenario back then during the Vietnam War, and so we've enjoyed peace for some time now. Well, to hear other political minds said just a few weeks ago, but I personally, let me go on record for thanking you for your service, and
Well,
also appreciate your level of commitment that helps us to enjoy where we are today. And I commend you for the book, and perhaps it could render to typical people the level of commitment and how it's necessary. And also, we enjoy peace because of sacrifice, the sacrifice and the shed of blood. Quite frankly, American citizens who gave their all, the last measure of devotion for us to be here today. So I thank you for that. And so, in writing your book, were there areas of display and supply in the book that made you reflect in a deeper way? And if you could tell us what those were and why that was the case.
well, I've always been raised in a very religious family. Therefore, when I went into the Army, I was a Christian, and I wanted to do well. And, you know, my famous line is, being a good Christian and being a good pilot are not mutually exclusive. The
Yeah,
idea that
yeah,
good
yeah.
people can do good things, bad people can do good things, and bad people can do bad things.
That's
I
true. That's true.
I just wanted to succeed. I wanted to glorify God, and I wanted to be a good pilot, and I wanted to be a good soldier.
Yeah, that's awesome. What the trifecta? Well, I've heard people say, you know, when asked why won't you join the church, you know, and or the army of the Lord. And I heard somebody say, "Oh yeah, 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 I am, but I'm in His secret service."
Yeah, a lot of people are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But thank you so much. I mean, so
So I'd like to ask a question. So Edward T. Luttenberg, the Director of Communications at the National Vietnam War Museum, shared and mentioned your guides and your principles. I think you've shared some of those right now. But when you're in combat, or when you're in a situation where everything, your normal norm is gone, you know, how do you then find those same principles that in a normal environment you could, you know, quite easily, and I say this because, you know, when I'm in the United States and I'm praising and worshiping in beautiful churches with great choirs and great preaching and a loving congregation, and then when I go back to India or a developing country and there's just so much of crisis going on, you know, it gets your faith really gets shook up. So tell me about any of those experiences that you may have had and what kept you going and kept your faith.
Well, I think it was ingrained in me. It was a deep commitment. And I remember that as I would go into battle, I would just say, "Dear God, take care of me, take care of my crew." And I would, from then on, full concentration on my situational awareness and try to do everything I could to keep from, you know, having a bad accident or crashing or what have you. But the thing is it's really difficult because you are scared to death. Anybody that flies in combat and says they're not afraid, they're lying to you, because I was scared to death. But the only thing is, well, whatever's going to be is going to be. And, you know, we used to have the saying, you can't do anything about that bullet that's got your name written on it, but be concerned about those addressed to whom it may concern. So the idea is you don't know if you're going to make it or not. I lost many good friends. It just broke my heart. And a lot of times I had the survivor's remorse. Why did they go and I didn't? Well, you can only ask God that. And that's part of the providence, I guess, was I was always very, very blessed, and I survived some harrowing situations.
Wow, that's
Wow,
really amazing.
that is amazing.
Question for you. Now, I know, and I don't know if I'd ask you, but let's put it this way. I know there was probably a couple incidences that you knew when you were flying in, man, and I mean, and it's real. I mean, and then you're wondering, Lord, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. I mean, because something occurred to me the other day. It's about total surrender, total surrender, and you surrender to God's serenity. You surrender to God's serenity, and you're flying in. You said, Lord, I mean, and you thought going to yourself, I don't know how I'm gonna make this, Lord. I mean, was there an incident like that that you remember and recall and can reflect on?
Many.
Yeah.
There was two in particular, and both of them I was very fortunate to get distinguished flying crosses for.
Oh, okay.
One was I was flying the UH-1s, which was the smaller helicopter in the background. We called them slicks.
Uh-huh.
And there was a fire base under fire in the middle of the night. And they asked for volunteers. He says, if you don't take the medical supplies and ammunitions, they're not going to make it. So we said, well, we'll try. So we went in there above tall trees. It's all in the book. And we hovered over 200-foot trees, lowered medical supplies and ammunition. And any minute we thought, hey, this may be the last. But fortunately, Providence worked out. We turned off our lights, flew out of there, and we were very blessed. And another time was when we were on a mission. We were flying Chinooks at that time, and that can you still just hear me?
We
Yeah,
can.
we can see her.
Yes.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
actually, we were rescuing 8 people that had been blown up by a Vietnamese North Vietnamese booby trap. So we had a hoist on our helicopter, and we were bringing them up out of the trees. And on the way back, one was already killed in action, 2 died en route, and then when we got back, I was really distraught, and I was just sitting there shaking my head and saying, we've tried our hardest to save them all. And one of the corpsmen that were in the helicopter with us says, sir, it's not your fault. Says the 3 that died, they had massive brain injuries and they couldn't possibly make it. But he says, you can be thankful that 5 of them will make it. And that gave me some comfort. And, when people call me a baby killer, well, I was most proud of the missions where we saved lives. And I always looked on that as my mission. And all of this is in the book. And it's the thing is when I graduated from flight school in June of 1964, and I had orders for Korea, and then I know eventually I'd go to Vietnam. I says, you really ought to start keeping a journal, because one day this is going to be important if for no one else than your family. I was single at the time, but I thought, well, at some time I'm going to have a wife and children, maybe grandchildren. And I am just thankful that I did keep the journal, and everything that's in the book is factual.
Wow. Amazing.
What a story.
What
What
a
a
story.
story. That's amazing. I have to give you kudos and credits and thank God for sparing you and keeping you to tell the story. And if nothing else, I mean, sounds like a world-class history, a world-class book. And I'm looking forward to getting our copy so that we can share the good news.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brother James.
I appreciate that.
So the book is called The Second Team, and it's available everywhere. And you can also get it from James directly, or you can go to Amazon. This is part of our Brightside book club, and we will definitely put this on our front center list of books for purchase. So thank you, James. This was wonderful, and I hope I can bring you back again. I'm so honored to have you. And I will talk to Rebecca about how we can do something special with your book.
Well, thank you very much. My book has not been out very long, and and I just retired. You know, I spent 54 years in aviation, and my latest assignment was on the F-16 program with Lockheed Martin in Fort Worth. So I retired after 38 years. So I've been in aviation, and hopefully I've made some contribution to the aviation community.
You know what is so amazing about your story? We see these Hollywood movies and we look at these sexy helicopters and we think about these pilots flying commercial flights. When you think about a pilot who's carrying bodies, that's tough. And I think you're a bigger hero and a bigger pilot than I've ever known, because I think that's really something. That's really something. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Okay,
So
we'll be in
Donna,
touch.
I've got all my veterans now on Spotlight. So I'm going to let Donna, do you have a question? And Jerry and Reginald is also part of the U.S. Army. So yeah, so U.S. Air Force, Navy, and Army. So let's have a
James,
conversation. Let's open the
James, I
dialogue.
would love to sit down and talk to you. We need to have a Zoom call with just us vets in the room someday and a few others that we know. Lester Patrick is another member of Claire's group, and he's a veteran, and he would enjoy this. And there's a few others that I can't come to mind. But I do want to ask you a question. You were, I think, an amazing hero. You weren't just transporting stuff. You were transporting some precious things, which were people.
Yes.
And I know it must have grieved you to find out when someone didn't make it, or, you know, something awful happened to that person. So how did you cope with that? And was it your faith that really you had to lean on? Because obviously not everyone's going to make it, and you knew that, but you must have carried a heavy weight knowing that.
Well, it was, but you have to, you know, I always went through the exercise that many Christians do. You know, should I be a conscientious objector? Am I able to kill anybody? And I came to the conclusion, yes, studying the Bible and what have you, yes, I think I could, but thankfully I never had to.
Very,
And-
very, very great. Very warm story. Awesome. But you had the heart of a lion.
I have one more question. Is there a message that you can give? Because we live in Goldsboro and we are right next to US Air Force, and a lot of them will be watching this video. Is there a message that you would give to our soldiers who are coming home after Afghanistan, and how will they settle back to their families and their friends and get back to civilian life after they've been through what you've been through? What advice and inspiration could you give them? And I know that your book would be perfect for them to read. So what advice would you give them as they come back home?
Well, it was difficult for me when I came back home. The big thing is find some noble goal. For me, it was to go back and complete my education, try to do some good, always be thankful. We always were guided by General MacArthur's great words back then, was duty, honor, country. And I don't think people honor our veterans as much as they should, and I always do, especially those that have been wounded and lost legs and what have you. And then the Gold Star families, they're the true heroes. I was lucky I wasn't touched.
Yes, but we're lucky that you were not touched. You kept your diary and kept your records, and you have a
But
book
you-
for us. So that is
You
amazing.
saw it all. You saw
Yes.
it all.
You saw
Yes.
it all. That's amazing.
Very good. Very good.
Any
you.
question, Jerry? Any experiences or any questions?
Well, James, it's an honor to meet you. I was served during Vietnam, but I was in the States primarily drawing blood from Marine volunteers to send to Vietnam. But what is the name of your book again?
The second team.
The Second Team.
The reason I chose the title Second Team is the 1st Cavalry Division was always known as the first team. And if you ever saw the movie or read the book, We Were Soldiers with Mel Gibson,
Yeah.
they
Great.
were the first team. They were the first
Ranger.
cavalry that went into
Right.
Vietnam, and
Right.
they fought in the Od Drang Valley.
Right.
We were the ones that came in and replaced those. So I
Okay.
call my book The Second Team.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
And
appreciate,
they were amazing patriots and amazing people. And they went through some really difficult stuff.
Uh,
I
My
appreciate
goodness.
your comments also about the medic. I mean, I've worked with a lot of Navy corpsmen, independent duty corpsmen and so on, and they are amazing guys and gals.
Yes, they really are.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. We
Okay.
got to move on here.
Yes,
But thank you
Esther
so much,
Patrick is
James.
not here today,
Thank
but
you
we
for-
have a lot of veterans in this group and we honor our veterans. We love our veterans. So this is a group that absolutely loves veterans. So if you feel homesick or lonely, this is a group to be in. So Reginald, tell us about your Army experience and any questions.
Well, first and foremost, I just want to say thank you once again for being here, and my fellow veterans, I thank you all for your service and your contributions to our great country. I'll tell you a little bit about my service. I served 23 years and I supported in Iraq. I also supported in Afghanistan. I was also in Kuwait that supported either parts of that country. My experience in Iraq was more direct, and I worked alongside the Army chaplain. And so we went everywhere, and it was amazing what we needed to do, and to be alongside people as they're about to fulfill their missions, whether they're flying a plane, whether they're walking dismount, whatever the case may be. I say that to say this: faith is important, and I believe in situations like that when the environment is austere and you don't know if you're going to return, faith becomes increasingly important. And
Yep.
so, and that's the thing that was a honor for me to help the people to my left and my right, and to pray and be with those. And I will say, just like so many, there are a lot of people I served with that I return with, spoke with to this day. There are some that, yes, I may have went to that area with them, but they may not physically be with us right now. But they'll always be in here. They'll always be in here, and there's always a part. They'll always be there, and knowing that we supported the same cause, and took care of what needed to be done, and represented the citizens of this great country. And I mean, and that's pretty commonplace regardless of what branch you serve, because you're all my brothers and sisters as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, and thank you all for your service. So we are watching a segment with James Downing about his new book, The Second Team, available everywhere. And thank you, Colonel Donna. Thank you, Captain Jerry. Thank you, Sergeant Reginald. I thank you all for your services, and thank you for joining us today on this broadcast. And if you're watching and you served, tell us in the comment section. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to honor you. We'd love to salute you. And thank you for watching our segment.